Cathie Wood is one of my favorite investors to keep track of, not necessarily because I agree with all of her investing choices, but more so because I just really enjoy looking at what stocks she's investing in. It's always a bunch of really interesting companies that are trying to do something exciting or revolutionary for the future. And while many of those stocks can be very speculative and high risk, there can also sometimes be a hidden gem or two among them. So I don't really pay too much attention to what the haters say about Cathie. I actually really like her, and I'm really glad that there is a big investor like her around. Plus, you know what? Whether you like her or not, you really should give the woman credit for being one of the few giant investors out there that actually releases all of her stock trades every single day. Because if you want to look at Warren Buffett's or Ray Dalio's, for example, well, you'd have to wait until their investment firms release their quarterly updates. But not with Cathie Wood and ARK Invest, which I do really respect. In fact, because of that, in today's video, we get to look at the top 5 largest stock purchases that Cathie made this very month here in January 2024. How cool is that? And by the way, she's been pouring tons of money into the stock market recently because of all the recent volatility. So it's going to be a ton of fun to look at. And of course, guys, in typical All Is World fashion, I'll not only give you my own opinion on each one of these 5 stocks, but I'll even rank them from best to worst as well based on that opinion. So it's going to be a ton of fun. I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider subscribing. Really helps the channel. If you want to go above and beyond, you can also support me on Patreon. Link is in the description. You'll also get some cool perks in return, like access to our community Discord or our new community stock portfolio that we're actually building from scratch, which has been a ton of fun. So those things really help keep this channel alive. Thank you to everyone that is supporting me that way. Couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much. I love you and I really appreciate all your help. But with all that said, let's not waste any more time, guys. This is going to be a fun one. Let's jump straight into this fresh new list of the 5 biggest stock purchases that Cathie Wood is making right now in January 2024. All right, now we'll be counting up here from smallest to largest purchase, and coming in at number 1, the smallest of the bunch, is going to be Iridium Communications, ticker symbol IRDM, which Cathie purchased over 200,000 shares of this past month, which at today's price leaves it roughly somewhere around $7.5 million. So even though it's the smallest purchase, it's still a quite large one overall. Now, if you've never heard of this company before, they're actually one of the largest satellite communications companies in the world, which they claim to also be the only network capable of covering the entire planet. And through their products and services, they deliver voice, internet and data, tracking, messaging, and more to not just consumers, but also businesses and even governments, which, by the way, includes both domestic and foreign, through that satellite network. They also recently launched Project Stardust, which aims to provide these services for the Internet of Things too, which should be an extremely large and growing market in the future. And overall, it's just a very exciting company that is trying to do a lot of things. But a couple concerns that I do kind of have right off the bat, though, is that while satellites provide more coverage, they're often not as strong or reliable as more localized networks using things like towers and fiber. Although the counter argument to that is that satellites are at least more useful for rural and hard to reach areas that terrestrial infrastructure struggles to reach. Sorry, I can't speak today. But for example, Iridium's technology was recently shown off during the longest solo bike crossing of Antarctica, which is pretty impressive. Another concern, though, would be growing competition, namely from Elon Musk with SpaceX and Starlink, which, although primarily focused on internet, could potentially expand into voice and data services in the future too. But for the moment, at least, I do think Iridium has done a great job of cutting out a big piece of the market for themselves, which has led to some decent growth in both sales and even a recent crossing of GAAP profitability reported last fiscal year too. Unfortunately, though, their growth seems to be falling back down, with 2024 expected to be almost a flat year on sales, which is not a great sign for a company that just barely started turning a profit. And while the stock has at least crashed by almost half its value from the top, leaving it at the bottom of its 52-week range, it is still up almost 100% in the past 5 years with a fairly rich valuation of a 131 PE and almost a 6 PS ratio, respectively. I think the PE can come down quickly if they continue to grow the bottom line, but at the moment, it is still a bit rich up there. However, I kind of like the business. I like the fact that they've already built out a pretty big network of 66 operating satellites with 9 spares in orbit that, did have a high initial cost, but can now generate recurring revenues with over 2 million paid subscribers. So overall, I do still see some room here for upside in the future. I guess the only thing that kind of worries me is the slowdown in growth and possible growing competition. So because of that, I'm gonna have to rank it somewhere around the middle for now, probably at like number 3, just because I'm not too excited enough to buy the stock myself. It just kind of feels like a bit of a middle of the road kind of stock overall. There's some pros, but also some cons. It's kind of a middle ranking, middle of the road kind of stock feeling for me personally. All right, moving on to stock number 2, though, we have one of Cathie's absolute favorite biotechs and one of her biggest investments too, in CRISPR Therapeutics, ticker symbol CRSP, which she recently increased her position on in January by another $22 million. And my guess is that Cathie clearly feels that this is a great time to buy after having crashed by over 70% from the top. So what the heck is going on with this stock? Well, as the name implies, this is a biotech that has gone all in on the development and future potential of CRISPR gene editing technologies, which is of course used to cut and edit DNA in order to treat all kinds of various diseases, like for example, hereditary disease, autoimmune, blood disorders. They use it for regenerative purposes and even to treat cancer too. Of course, the potential of all this is really promising and exciting, which can sometimes cause the stock to skyrocket in price whenever they're on the verge of breaking out a new treatment or reaching regulatory approval or even announcing a collaborative partnership with another company. Thus, you often see their financials be just as volatile too. However, while it is true that the majority of their treatments are still stuck in their pipeline going through various trials, CRISPR has at least received regulatory approval for 2 different blood treatments, which I believe are the first to receive gene editing approval in the entire world. And over time, there should be more approvals to come, which is why the stock is enticing while currently being down so much. In fact, I'm actually thinking about buying a small piece of it myself, which I may do in the coming week if I can convince myself to take that risk and bet on their future potential, as the valuation is unfortunately still pretty rich. But I still kind of like it here. I like the odds, and I think I'm going to give it a pretty high ranking of number 2 because of it. It's a pretty tempting stock, and like I said, I might be buying it soon. All right, moving on to the third biggest purchase, though, we actually have another biotech, this time in Recursion Pharmaceuticals, ticker symbol RXRX, which Cathie purchased over $33 million of in January as well. Now, this one is primarily in the business of discovering new drugs, and one of the reasons why it's been getting so much attention, especially from Cathie Wood, is because it's using artificial intelligence to accomplish that, which it thinks can help not only lower costs, but also the time it takes to research, identify, and develop new drug treatments for various diseases. And at the moment, their AI platform only has 3 rare disease programs in phase 2 trials, with another pair of programs recently completing phase 1. All of which will likely need at least a couple more years before they see any kind of regulatory approval, let alone actual commercial release. And because of that, Recursion's financials have been, well, to put it mildly here, they've been pretty horrible, and that's not so mild, but they've been bad. And that's because they sometimes generate even more losses than they even do in sales. But while their in-house treatments are still taking time to develop, Recursion is at least taking the opportunity to license out their platform to other pharmaceutical companies within this giant industry. For example, the drug giant Bayer is using Recursion's AI platform to research new drug treatments for cancer, while even the tech and AI specialist Nvidia has invested tens of millions of dollars into this company as well. So long term, I actually think there's plenty of potential here that is worth investing in for anyone wanting a speculative play on the future of AI in healthcare, which after losing more than 3/4 of its value, I gotta admit, admit the stock is getting a little tempting here. But overall, I still just think that it's a bit too risky without meaningful enough results to warrant making a big investment in the company, which even if I treat it like a risky biotech, personally, I would still prefer putting my money into CRISPR instead. So this one is going to have to go in last place because of that. I'm not saying that it's a horrible spec stock, but it's just not one that I'd feel very confident betting on, at least not quite yet. Okay, that will, however, leave us now, though, with the final two stocks of the list. And coming in at number 4, well, wouldn't you know it, we actually have another biotech here. This time in 10x Genomics, ticker symbol TXG, which Cathie purchased a whopping more than $40 million of just in the past month alone. Now, what does this company do? Well, as the name implies, this is another genes-related biotech, except this one primarily sells analyzer devices and related services for laboratory use, where these systems are capable of quickly analyzing thousands of different data points related to cells and their health and their behavior and anything else to do with them, which in turn is used for many different applications in biomedicine. For example, their cell immune profiling system can analyze how T cells respond to various infections, including, by the way, the pepperoni from the most recent pandemic. It's all very impressive work, which is why their tools are already being used by every single one of the top 100 research institutions in the world, with over 7,000 publications filed on their work as well, which is not only more than any other direct rival, but it's probably more than all of them combined. But on top of that, it's also proof that their products are just very essential for both today's life science research as well as that of the futures as well. Case in point, the company is already doing hundreds of millions of dollars in sales per year with a solid double-digit growth rate. But like many Cathie Wood stocks, this is yet another speculative play here with big losses on the bottom line. And even after crashing by a huge amount coming off of the pandemic, the stock is still richly valued, even on the very forgiving price to sales metric. I'm not saying that it's a bad spec stock, but it's actually the one that, personally, I have the hardest time researching this one and understanding their entire business, at least out of the list that we've covered so far. And mostly because of that reason, I kind of feel like I have to put it in last place. I mean, it might be good for others that are more knowledgeable about this field, but for me, I've got enough on my plate these days to have to do so much more research on a company that, I would say doesn't even really excite me that much to begin with. So I think I find the others on this list a little more interesting, a little easier to understand, and because of that, I'm going to give it the bottom ranking for now. All right, guys, that's going to leave us now, though, with the final stock of the list, the biggest purchase of all. And yeah, not too big of a shocker here. That stock is an absolute favorite of Cathie Wood's in Tesla, ticker symbol TSLA, which is not only one of her biggest investments already, but she also decided to add another $45 million more of just in January alone. Which, I can totally understand why, as Cathie is notorious for buying heavier whenever her favorite stocks fall. And that's exactly what Tesla has been experiencing recently, with the stock price not only falling by almost 30% just in the past month alone, but from the top, it's also lost more than half its entire value. Much of that has been due to a deceleration in growth given a combination of factors, including a weak economy, high interest rates and inflation, weaker demand for high-priced EVs, and even growing competition, which the most recent earnings report that they just released this past week illustrated all of this perfectly, as it marked 4 out of 5 quarters now of decelerating growth, with only a 3.5% rise in sales year over year, which is pretty low. On top of that, Tesla has been lowering their prices on their vehicles for more than a year now in an effort to help consumers wrestle with high inflation and interest rates in hopes of keeping demand high during a period of rising competition in key markets. However, that's also led to weaker margins, which have been falling for some time, and lower overall revenue growth that Tesla thinks could be even worse in 2024. But while most investors are selling out of the stock, I actually think Cathie may be justified in buying on the dip, as Tesla is quickly becoming a much more diversified company than just a traditional automaker. For example, their energy deployments more than doubled in 2023. They recently showed off the second generation of their AI robot that continues to improve its capabilities, which can be applied to just about anything these days, whether it's working on an assembly line for manufacturing or transporting goods or automating tasks or just acting as a personal assistant. But Elon Musk, for example, believes that it'll ultimately be the biggest part of their business, which he also stated during the earnings during the recent earnings release that it could be releasing as early as next year, which would be very soon. I don't think it'll be that soon, but he seems to be pretty optimistic about it. Anyway, in the meantime, they've got a bunch of other stuff. I mean, the Tesla Semi continues to ramp up and it's been receiving very good reviews. The Cybertruck has been officially released and that should be ramping up as well. Their autonomous driving network continues to be improved, which they just released a new version called V12 that's replacing hundreds of thousands of lines of computer code with AI neural networks, and it's set to be finally paving the way for a more widespread release of autonomous driving, which we all know how massive that market could be over time and generating recurring service revenues for them, which even Elon has said in the past that they'd be willing to license it out to other companies too, and that could be a big growth driver for them longer term as well. And even if we just focus on Tesla as a pure automaker, I mean, Elon even spoke about the weaker growth, saying that even though everyone wants a Tesla, many consumers just simply can't afford the higher priced EVs right now in the current economy. So because of that, they're actually going to shift their focus over to finally releasing their next gen, cheaper mass market vehicle in 2025, where growth will likely return in a big way. So while I'm not saying that Tesla is the best stock in the market right now, and I think it could definitely still have a pretty rough 2024 year, but just apart from that, I do still think that it's worth investing in longer term for the future potential. And when compared to most of Cathie Wood's stocks that are deep in the red usually, Tesla actually continues to post record high deliveries every single year with also record financials on both the top and bottom line. And I would say that because of that, I'm just gonna have to rank it here number one on the list. I may even consider adding some more to my own position too if it continues to fall like it has been. But there you have it, guys. In conclusion, I actually found this update of Cathie Wood purchases to be actually quite interesting and somewhat attractive too. I can understand why she's buying pretty much all of these stocks, and while I wouldn't necessarily invest in all of them myself, I do actually kind of like the combination of Tesla and CRISPR, with Tesla being the more reliable kind of long-term investment, while CRISPR is the higher risk but also high reward potential type of spec play. And those two in combination, I do actually kind of like. So my rankings 1 and 2, I kind of like those. I might be buying some of those here in the coming weeks and even months. But let me know if you agree with me on the ranking, if you agree with any of my thoughts, if you want to add anything, you disagree with anything, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know if you're investing in any of these stocks yourself. Drop a comment down below. But thanks again for stopping by, my friends. I hope that you're all doing well, and I will catch you in the next one. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.